Dr. Winchester. I keep sending this thing to them.
Who?
I'm not seeing the link to click that you guys going live.
Who's that?
Tori.
Tori, welcome. Dane Wilson. Mr. Swaby, Maurice, welcome guys. We're just gonna hang out for a little bit and wait for oh, see, Naomi is already here. That's fast.
We don't waste time around here.
You know?
We're efficient people.
We're just gonna wait for a few people to come in. Brianna, Jason, welcome guys. Facebook Live, Jennifer, what's going on? Jason, hey Jason, big up Mr. Mosquito. Welcome, sir. We're gonna have an amazing session tonight. This one's gonna be really good. We're gonna be covering some of the things we've covered before, but this time we're taking it from the approach of, if you do these things, how does it affect your bottom line? Not just to have good looking animals, etc. But we're gonna be looking at, if you do these things, does it improve your bottom line? Does it make your operation more efficient, more productive, which in turn give you more profit? So Naomi, Dr. Winchester is our special guest, and she's gonna break it all down for us and get into it. You know, all the different things we're gonna be talking about, as the title says, profitable management practices. So all the stuff you do on your farm, how do you make them, do them so it makes your farm profitable, not just having nice animals and etc. We're gonna get into nutrition, grazing, selecting animals, breeding, the efficiency of things that happens on the farm, and how those things affect your profitability. So should be a good one. And then we'll, as usual, take questions and have some fun while we're at it. You know, I usually try to wait till we get around 15 people or so before we start getting into this. Facebook massive, welcome. Clinton, Blaine, Alric, big up. Farmer to farmer, welcome. Good to see you guys joining and participating. Yo, what's going on in Turf? So tomorrow, Turf, I see you tomorrow, right? I'm only doing this because you in a brethren, like Sunday I'm asleep in there. But big respect and thanks for coming through. All right, let's see where we're at here. We're going on with a little thing. We're getting some early people, because usually our people them show up kind of, at them own pace. Everybody should be home. It's still curfew time, right? Yo, give me a thumbs up if it's still curfew time. If curfew's still around. If curfew is still going on, let me know. Give me a thumbs up or a yes or something. I don't keep track because I never leave the farm anyways. Alright, we're gonna get into this now.
Curfew is at 8 p.m.
Huh?
Curfew is at 8 p.m.
Yeah, curfew's at 8. So that means everybody should be home. Well, if you're abide by the rules, then you should be home. Can we turn that down a little bit? Oh, you said what? Okay, so let's do this. So Dr. Winchester, Naomi Winchester, is she's a vet, and she specializes in reproduction and best husbandry. She's like a super vet. She did her studies in New Zealand, and she currently works with Cardi. If you guys remember Cardi, Mr. Farron still works with Cardi, and Cardi has a series of videos that we watched before we started our operation, and cause that's where we saw Khalil, that's where we saw Mr. Farron, Maxine Brown, Dr. Young. Yeah, so Nayon, Dr. Winchester is gonna break this all down for us on the best practices, profitable practices for your farm. So this is gonna be a really good one, and I'm excited about it. So let me get her on because it's gonna be fun. Here we go. Let me send my request and get her in. Tiana, I see you. Welcome, KC. Hey, there you go, guys. That's Naomi, Dr. Winchester. Can you hear
Hi,
me?
good night.
Good night. Did everybody, the audio is good for everyone?
I'm hearing you.
Okay, so Dr. Winchester, can we be informal and can I call you Naomi?
Of course, Naomi, yeah.
All right.
Of course, yeah.
So, Naomi, let's start with your background. Let's start with your initial passion, education, all that stuff. Let's give the people a breakdown of what you're about.
Okay, so my passion, I really just chose the profession. You know, I didn't grow up on a farm with animals or anything like that, as most vets would say. I had a science background in high school, and I opted to do veterinary medicine as opposed to becoming a doctor. So I enrolled at vet school in Trinidad. And it was there that because of how practice is basically in Tobago, where I really developed the interest in large animal medicine or farm animal medicine, and understood the need for livestock production and reproduction, more so reproduction physiology. And then I just seeked another opportunity and did my master's. And basically, my master's really helped me. Is one thing, you know, you wear a cap as a veterinarian, but my master's really helped me to understand and appreciate production more, and production in relation to management practices. So even though my interest or my area of focus is assisting, you know, breeding techniques, like we talk about AI and ET, I then realized that you have to have a good management system before you can use those reproductive techniques
Got it.
in order for it to work. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, well, the accent, you're Trinidadian, right?
I'm from Tobago. I'm from
Oh, you're from
Tobago.
Tibet. Well, why you don't? Why so? Oh, so you have to say TNT.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Good.
can't make that.
Yeah. So you TNT, you bad to the bone TNT.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I spent a couple months in Trinidad
Uh-huh.
for shooting, doing some shooting down there, and it was right about carnival time. So uh,
Oh,
we
okay.
had we had quite a bit of fun. Okay, so let's get into this. Best production practices that directly affects the bottom line, right? In my opinion, we're talking about, you know, breeding your animals, the nutrition of your animals. How would you list them and give us your take on which ones are the priorities and in what order they should come on your in anyone's operation?
Okay. So the first one, or the first parameter that I would choose to address would be nutrition,
Yeah.
because that kind of determines every other aspect in your management system, or the products that you would obtain at the end of your management system. So let's say, for example, you have young animals, and if I say a young you, I mean it would be applicable to those farmers who have both sheep and goat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have a young animal, and say you need to know that you have to be able to provide the required dietary feed intake. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. And because basically that would then facilitate the time or how soon that animal comes or achieves puberty or comes into sexual maturity. Yeah.
Okay.
So you want to fulfill that nutrition requirement, because you want the animal to gain an adequate live weight,
Yes.
as in reach the appropriate body size to facilitate to achieve puberty, and then maintain that body condition score that is necessary for all the other processes of reproduction.
Okay.
So by choosing your how you feed young animals, you get them into puberty at that breeding age, you maintain their body condition, and basically it helps you with gestation, and then have like a successful birth at parturition. So how you feed them is really, really important in them, becoming mature and
Okay.
getting other reproduction benefits. Like one such benefit would be like ovulation, which is a main thing. So the most significant influence on ovulation rates is nutrition, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about this concept where a lot of farmers practice known as flushing, where you would flush animals within 4 to 5 weeks before you breed them.
Okay.
That
So
is
can you
really
briefly explain? Can you briefly explain what flushing is?
right. So flushing is when you would increase the protein and the energy content of your feed,
Mm-hmm.
um, so that you get the animals basically to be in a positive energy balance. So they have a high energy store that is required to facilitate all the physiological processes involved with having a high ovulation rate, or a good quality, producing a good quality egg, producing high amounts or high quantities of ovum, and then being successful in terms of when you mate them now, you have high conception rates, you have good embryo development, you have good fetal development in the pregnancy, and then that would later on lead to good lamb birth weights. So basically you increase the nutritional value of the feeds, and more so you focus on your metabolizable energy, because that's what is required. And ideally you want animals to gain within like about a kilogram a week to get into a body condition score of about 2.5 to 3,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the live weight gain and any body condition score is basically the fat reserves, the fat stores, the energy stores that the animal has.
So when do
So
you start? When do you start this flushing process?
four
Let's
to
say
five weeks.
four to
Uh-huh.
five weeks before you. put them out to breed, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, and then so let's so let's start with the breeding process. You flush them to put them with the buck or to do AI or whatever it is, right? And that
Mm.
increases your success at conception.
It has yes, a likely chance that you're going to increase the likelihood that the animal is going to become pregnant at the end of the breeding period.
Okay, and then the embryo, it helps with better development of embryos.
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right. So now we're in that stage where the animal is pregnant. Do you
Hmm.
continue the high concentrate or high energy feed for how long after you know that the
Right.
animal is bred?
So after mating, and you do, let's say you do your early pregnancy detection and you in fact determine that your animal is pregnant. It
Uh-huh.
would also be useful at this point, maybe you could determine whether they're pregnant with singles or twins, because that also determines how you would feed and manage this animal. So in pregnancy, you also want good nutrition because you still have to maintain the live weight and the body condition score, especially in mid-pregnancy, right? Because in mid-pregnancy now, you want to facilitate good energy so that you have good placental development. So you want the placenta to increase in size
Uh-huh.
and basically nourish the fetal development so that you can have or uh, basically you get like good or high a fetal birth weight. You'll get a good birth weight as a result of that. In some
So what age
instances,
or what time during the gestation are we talking here? Are we talking 2 months, 3 months? What are we? Where are we right now?
you're talking like three into 4 months.
Okay.
At 3 months, yeah, three
Uh-huh.
into 4 months, that stage is a critical and important stage where you have most of the placental development taking place and rapid fetal growth as well. So in some instances, you don't want your females to be over conditioned
Uh-huh.
at at that stage, because if they're over conditioned, then most of the feed that they eat would be just to maintain their size and
So in
not
other words, you don't want
necessarily.
you don't want a fat pregnant mother at 3 and 4 months, or 2 and
Yes,
3 months. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Um.
right.
So
And
go ahead. Sorry.
okay. You're kind of breaking up, so but I'm hearing you. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was gonna ask. I was under the. I've been told that at the last month of gestation, you also increase the energy intake for the animal, which is the last month of pregnancy. So because I think rapid development happens with
Of
the
the
kid at
yeah.
that, right?
Yeah, so it continues because at that time now you want to be able to facilitate good mammary development, as in you want the udders to grow. You
Mm-hmm.
want to also start to initiate milk production and and yeah, and good colostrum development, because when you have the young ones, the colostrum is very important for the new offspring, new birds. Yeah.
Okay, so how does grazing, if you're a grazing operation, right? If you're a grazing operation and you, like for us, we do rotational grazing, so the animals get fresh pasture
Mm-hmm.
every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be enough in the middle of gestation, like 2, 3 months, 4 months?
Repeat that.
I said if the animal is just grazing,
Mm-hmm.
like for us, we do rotational grazing and they get fresh pasture every day. Would
Mm-hmm.
that be enough for mid gestation, or do I still need to add
Supplements.
supplement constantly? Yeah.
So the other thing, it all depends on what you're grazing them on, right? What forages you're grazing them on. Because one of the things is that we need to know, or farmers should really know, what species of forages we're feeding our animals and the nutritive value of each forage. So it's not just, okay, a paddock with what they say, green, nice, fresh looking grass. But what is the nutritive value? Like, what's the dry matter content? What is the protein content? What is the fiber content? Like, all the factors that would facilitate the energy requirements of the animal during that physiological stage. So sometimes it's not just say, oh, we grazing them on good pasture, but do you really know that is actually good pasture? You know, if you haven't really, you don't really understand the species that you have,
Well,
because that's one of
speaking
the
of that,
things.
there's
Hmm.
Khalil Brown just joined, and he told me my pastures are good.
Okay, well, that's good, because
Yeah,
what
he
I was
doesn't
gonna
like the
say.
guinea grass, but he says it's what's in between the guinea grass that makes my pasture good.
Right.
Yeah, he
Because
says it's
that was one of
making.
the things that I was exposed to in New Zealand, where, they're seasonal. And
Hmm.
each season they have a forage that they would feed the animals on due to their physiological stage. So you would know what you would give weaned lambs, you know what you would put the pregnant mothers on. And it's really just to maintain that their nutritional requirements. So if it is Khalil says your pastures are really giving them that right amount of nutrition that they need for that stage, then yeah, you don't really need to supplement. Remember, these animals are they're really supposed to be on pasture, and concentrates isn't really shouldn't be required as heavily as we use them, in
Yeah.
all honesty. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So speaking of grazing and pastures, right?
Uh-huh.
You were in New Zealand. You spent a significant amount of time in New Zealand while you were
Hmm.
studying. And how do they use grazing and pasture management to maximize their production?
So they know, like I said, it's seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
So the forage that would give you the highest yield, they literally know which forages would give them the highest yield or nutritive yield and in what season. You understand?
Yes.
So depending on the season, whether it's spring, whether it's winter where you have the pregnant mothers, they know which forages that they would actually plant, and then they do a lot of intercropping. So they would mix the forages as well, the different grasses as well. So and then they would stock them appropriately where you have, you could work out your stocking in terms of depending on the space, how much animals you have in a particular area.
Yeah, the
And
dry matter, how much dry matter
right,
is available in a certain space,
right. And
right?
then you try to estimate their daily intake. At the same time, you kind of have to factor in the factors that would affect the daily intake. Apart from the physiological stage, whether they're pregnant or not, the temperature, well, for there, they will look at the temperature. But for us, we could also consider temperature in the sense that heat stress. Sometimes if animals really hot and, they wouldn't be comfortable, they wouldn't really eat as much as they would. So heat stress is a factor here in terms of uh, the dietary intake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Young, are you familiar with Dr. Young, right?
Yeah.
That's Trin Jam right there. She's a fellow Trini. Well, she's Trinidadian. I don't know if she's from Tobago or Trinidad, but she's TNT.
Hmm.
And she has a question. She says, "Do you believe tropical grasses can compare to with the grasses in New Zealand?"
I would say no, in the sense that even like the study I did for my thesis, where when you look at the dry matter content and even the water content, because in some instances, we have to make sure that animals have good access to water because of our climate here, the tropical climate. And then again, their animals are everything is basically pasture based. They don't use concentrates there at all, right? We still because let me say dry season, wet season, and then the different times of the rainy season, we might have a surplus, or the forages here might be giving us a higher yield. But
Yeah.
let's say in the dry season, when the yield decreases, that's when we tend to supplement with a lot of forages. You understand? because of the climatic conditions here. It varies, the humidity, like a lot of different factors. But in there, it's just pasture based throughout the year, which is why they choose specific forages for different seasons. The forages that would grow different in it, and grow best in different
So
seasons.
we really can't really use their grazing practices verbatim for us. We'll have to use maybe their approach to the nutritional application more than
Mhm.
the physical grazing practices, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're a cooler climate and they have different pastures and they have good pasture year round.
And they know the nutritive value of each forage that they feed. I think maybe that's another area that we need to really know here. Like, if farmers are really aware of all the different forages that they could use and provide for their animals. So if
Well,
you know that, and
that's something that I would really like to do here on this series, except that I can't find anybody that is going to be really versed on the application of the different forages because the closest I could come is Khalil, which knows the nutritional
repeat that.
value. I said Khalil Brown is the closest person, the person I know that can come closest to explaining the nutritional value of the forages we have available to us here in Jamaica,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right? But we need a comprehensive um, thing where people can put it together and says, okay, at
Yeah.
this time of the year, this plant or this type of grass is in abundance, and this is how
Mm-hmm.
we should use it.
Yeah.
I think we need something like that, especially
And
I would say
honestly,
in the region, we need something
yeah.
like that.
And to add to that is not just which the value of the animal, but when it's the best time to feed it to your
Yes,
animals, as in what
exactly.
stage of the plant's life, whether it's in
Yes.
the really young, because sometimes, when we allow the grasses to grow, and age, the
Hmm.
the nutritive value decrease. You
Yes.
understand? So is it the specific time or the best time to put your animals in those pastures where you would get the best results or the better performance from your animals, because they will be getting the dietary requirements. The needs will be met.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about selecting animals that works for the operation that you're doing, whether it's for meat or for dairy or whatever else is applicable. Go.
Okay.
Let's talk about how do you go about selecting animals, and what's
Okay.
the best approach.
All right. So firstly, we're not gonna go based on how good an animal looks, right? We want to look at the
Okay, hold
conditions
on.
in.
You want to say that again? Because we
You're
have
not
some.
just gonna go based on how good an animal looks,
Mm-hmm.
whether it looks good or you like the color, or just how it's pleasing to the eye. You really need to go into. This is where record keeping comes in, right?
Yeah.
Right? This is where record keeping comes in because it's important. And so you're going based on those parameters. So, for example, farmers really need to know the condition of their breeding stock at different physiological stages. In terms of live, when I say live weight gain, like, do we really weigh our animals regularly to really make sure that they're at a particular weight to sustain them during breeding or during pregnancy? And even just body condition, again, in terms of knowing the fat reserves that the animal has, right? So, and this is necessary before any major event like breeding, pregnancy and lactation. So for females, we want to select animals based on are we getting multiples, you want animals that will give you twins, that will give you triplets. You want them to have a heavy but like produce lambs or kids that would have like a heavy birth weight. That's
Mm-hmm.
another another good factor, again, record keeping will tell you that you want them to have a fast growth rate. You also want the lambs to be able to survive to weaning. So then you would have a weaning weight as well. What are the weights of the animals at weaning, right? And another parameter you look at is, besides the EU live weight and body condition score, during gestation, how, or even after, when you get the young ones, the mothering ability of the ewe, right? In terms of, is she attentive,
Is she a good mother?
providing, is she a good mother,
Yeah.
right? Does she have a high milk yield within, because lactation, it peaks during, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks. You get the high increased milk production, and after that you then need to find, you should, what they do is they find an alternative to really maintain the nutritional requirements for lambs. But apart from that, you want them to have a good maternal behavior, good milk production, and good pregnancy rates, during your breeding season. So you would select your females based on those productive parameters. And then for your rams, we look at the songness, breed songness evaluation. When you look at the reproduction songness, you look at the structure songness, and you look at the genetic potential. So an animal must pass the reproduction and structure songness. That is when you look at the conformation, how it looks. Are the legs straight? You look at the physical characteristics or the phenotypic characteristics that you desire in that breed. You're looking for straight legs, and it would vary from breed to breed. Another important part of that is how many of our farmers are actually measuring the testicular circumference of our male animals, Ideally for small ruminants, we want it to be within like about 32 centimeters. And so you have to pass the reproduction and structure songness before you look at the genetic potential. And the genetic potential is basically, first, is it reproductive? Like, are you choosing a ram that came from a prolific heritage? Like, was that ram came from twins or triplets, right? And would then be able to pass that on to the daughter offsprings, right? The female offspring.
Yeah.
And then another factor for genetic potential is the growth and the growth rates, like meat production, if you're looking at meat, and then even milk production, and in their case, wool production. So those are the production factors that they would choose an animal based on.
Okay, and so
Yeah.
these parameters and these things also work for sheep and goats, right? Not just sheep.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to, again, with records, you want to know the history, the trait or the strains, from the animal that you're selecting.
Okay. And there's a Dr. Young is asking about creep feed.
Okay. So the way they do it, remember I said we know that lactation, it peaks between 2 to 4 weeks. The milk production from the mother would peak during that time. So even though in some instances they would wean animals at 3 months, right? But there are even cases where they might wean them at 4 weeks, when we know that lactation is the amount of milk the mother is going to produce is going to decrease, right? So then they would remove the lambs and put them in a pasture. So remember, it's all pasture-based system. So there's no concentrate. So
Okay.
sometimes, so because they have their mothers and the young ones in pastures, young animals might start to pick, forage. So they would then move them to a pasture that has the forages that would provide them with the nutritive value or the requirements that they need at that age to then take them to the weaning weight. So they don't leave them with the mothers sometimes until the 3 months, because the more the young ones suckle from the mother is losing her live weight and body condition. And then remember, they want to improve or increase her body condition because they want to breed her again. Time is money. They don't want her to be with the lambs for so long, losing more condition or becoming more and more skinny and undernourished. So they would remove them to get the mothers back to a state where they can be mated again. And at the same time, you put the lambs in a pasture where you would get them to go from being at 1 month to the optimum weaning weights. And then that would then take them to that market weights. Yeah, so they don't do creep feeding. It's all pasture based, but it's just putting them on the right forage at the right time.
Okay, so what about operation that is intensive that does not graze?
It's extensive. I haven't
Everything
seen
over
it.
there is extensive.
It's
But what
expensive.
about your experience? You have your experience dealing with anything that's intensive?
Not for sheep. It's all extensive.
What
They
about
have the land.
goats? Goats.
So the goat industry is relatively, what do you say, new. It's now increasing there. So the main production is sheep for lamb, which lamb meat we import here, and wool. So it's all extensive, and they have the land mass to really have the different pastures and area for grazing. So it's all extensive.
Okay.
No,
So okay, let's get into their breeding practices. Oh,
mm-hmm.
Khalil has a question about
Pelleted,
pelleted forages.
no pelleted forages. No, it's all pasture based.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Who? What is that? Here's Dr. Patrick's question.
Have there been any studies looking at? Oh, hold on. Let me see. Uh, any studies looking at ramen development? You see that in small
And
ruminants.
folks, I know some people are watching and saying, hey, all this about sheep and stuff, but there's very few commercial goat operation on a massive scale around the world. So we have to take knowledge and expertise from sheep operation that has been successful, that has been operating for a long time, and they're on the
Rumen
forefront of new
development.
ideas.
Okay.
So we have to
Okay.
take those ideas and roll them over to our goat operation. So I know there's question about, is this about sheep or is this about goat? This is about small ruminants. So
Right.
we're getting ideas and getting information on how these people do things on a bigger scale and a more efficient way, a more productive way, because it's all about how the best things we can do to improve our bottom line. Okay, so can you answer that question for Dr. Patrick? Sorry.
Yeah. So I basically asking if there are studies which looked at rumen development in what is say young small ruminants that has not been on creep feed compared to those on early concentrates. But again, I keep saying it's all pasture based. So there's no creep feed, there's no concentrates at all. But there have been studies looking at how soon rumen development occurs in animals that are on pasture at different ages, like whether you have them with the mother in the different phases of that lactation period. And basically those studies were really to determine when was the best time or how soon you could remove them from the mother to then make the mother improve her condition to be bred again, and then to really continue the optimum growth rates of the lambs to get them to that market weights, that optimum weights at market time.
Okay,
So
I got
that's
a
a start.
question. I got a question from Facebook Live about selecting a buck from single birth or multiple birth. Is it better to select a buck from a single birth or multiple birth? A breeding buck,
Multiple births.
multiple
Multiple.
birth. Okay, there you go,
Because
TJ. Multiple birth is the answer.
it's better to do multiple because then he'll most likely be able to pass that on to his female offspring, which is what you would want.
Okay, so let's talk about breeding practices.
He was asking about breeding, yeah.
Yeah, because
So, mm-hmm.
breeding for me is the bottom is it's like the most important part of the operation outside of getting your nutrition right. If you're not
Mm-hmm.
breeding right and being efficient in getting your breeding system or breeding program in place, then
Mhm.
you're always gonna have problems with profitability, right? So let's talk about how efficient they use their breeding practices and what are their programs like. What do they do that keeps their operation profitable when it comes to breeding?
Okay. So one thing to know, because of the season, the sheep, there are seasonal breeders,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's a literally a season where the females are going to be most receptive. You know, like here in the tropics, we could relatively breed animals at any time in the year. For
Yeah.
them, it's so yeah. So for them, it's
All right.
seasonal.
Somebody said they're not hearing me.
Is it on my end or
Yeah.
your end?
Oh, I think someone on. Okay, Tiana, you're the only person that can't hear us. So okay. All
Not
right. Continue.
hearing.
Sorry.
Okay. Are you hearing me?
Yeah. Everybody else is saying the audio is fine. I just wanted to make sure that it's
Okay.
us. Okay, continue with the breeding, how they go about
Right. So
their
yeah, so
breeding.
they're seasonal breeders, and so there's a that period where they would put, believe it or not, is mainly natural service, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, you know, you choose your ram, you make sure he's sound, so you put like one ram with about 20, 35 females.
Yeah.
And during that the breeding season, you know, it's a window where the animals would be sexually receptive to the ram. And again, based on the pastures you put them on, you know, the live weight and the body condition scores is already taken into consideration. I know there's a lot of interest in the reproductive techniques. So
Yeah.
from what I've seen, the only time that commercial farms would really introduce AI or even embryo transfer into their production system is when they want to change the genetics. And it's basically because they want and change the genetics in terms of perhaps this line of rams is giving you an animal that has a higher carcass weight or that has a higher milk yield. So it's based on the production parameters. Then they would decide, okay, let's include a line from this ram into our flock or into our herd, basically.
Okay.
And that's the only time. Otherwise, they use the rams within for like 2 to 4 years
Yes.
before changing them. So it's all natural, mostly natural service. So I know here we use it here for to build numbers, you know, in some instances. Because the thing, and that's why I'm talking about profitable management practices, because these breeding techniques are costly, right?
Yes.
And if it
Mm-hmm.
is you don't have good records, you're not feeding properly, um, what else? You're not managing the animals properly. When you spend money and then do AI or do ET, and then you're not treating the offspring or not managing the offspring properly, you will not then produce an animal to give you the desired meat or milk production that it was, let's say, made for or that it's been doing. You wouldn't get the same productivity or profitability out of that. So you kind of just be wasting resources. So that's why I said I realized that you really need to have good management systems in place before incorporating these techniques, because they're really tailored towards increasing your productivity if managed appropriately.
Okay, so let's backtrack a second. So you gotta got your nutrition right. You gotta make sure if you're grazing or you're intensive, all that
Hmm.
nutrition and animals are in good condition before you get into spending money on, you know, AI or embryo transfer and all that stuff, because you're basically wasting your money
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
won't see the results, right?
Hmm.
And we're
That's
not
right.
into this business to waste money.
Yeah, we make money.
Yeah, Turf 1876 says, do they practice colored harness breeding with both buck and
That's,
does?
do they, or they just lock away one buck with some of the does? They don't use color harnesses, no. They would just put, they really have the space. So they would just put, like I said, one ram in a paddock with 25 to 30 ewes
How long
during
do
the breeding
how long do they
during the breeding season.
how long do they keep them together?
So I said the breeding season would be about a month, because normally sometimes within the first, and that's another requirement, or when you have a good female animals, because within the first 2 weeks of that breeding season, where they are, because of the photo period, and that's just getting into what seasonal breeders is all about, that photo period, getting them to ovulate, it's like within a 2 weeks window. So generally most of the females would come into heat earlier in the breeding season, depending on the photo period, as in the amount of light that's available. Yeah, so
Can
they
you
don't really use markers. They would
yeah.
then just do ultrasound scanning, at the end
Can you explain to some
to
more
get
folks
early.
what the harness is for those who don't know?
Okay, so the harness is basically a strap with, is it chalk that they would put in on the torso of the ram. So every time he mounts a receptive female, you would see a color that's marked on the back of the female. Yeah. And that would then show you. So in some instances, like say if we're synchronizing animals, we could use that with a teaser male, a teaser ram or buck, to really show us or tell us when or an animal is receptive, and then you go and you do your procedure.
Okay. So uh how does all that nutrition, proper grazing, or intensive feeding, selecting the buck, the breeding system of whether it's group breeding, synchronizing, how do putting all that together, right? How at the end of the day will that make your operation more profitable if you get it all
Because,
together? Yeah,
repeat that.
if it all comes together where you're doing all these things right, how do you see? How will
Mhm.
you tell if your business is profitable from doing all these things right?
Well, then you would be able, let's say, if your production system is for the purpose of meat, you
Mm-hmm.
should get you would get more animals reaching that market weight, or market weight, and then you would get more money depending on the carcass weights that you get from your young ones. Another thing is when you, like say when we wean lambs, and then that period between weaning and getting them to the optimum market weight is a time factor, where you don't want to keep animals for too long, because that increases the fiber content of the meat, and then you wonder why the meat's so tough and you have to pressure it, or it's not, the palatability changes, as in the taste of the meat changes.
Mm-hmm.
So the more females you get to have good ovulation rates, the higher your pregnancy rate, the higher your lambing rates. You get more lambs on the ground, you get more lambs to weaning weights, then you take them to market weight. You get them to market weight, and they're of good quality, good bone to meat ratio, good dressing out percentage. If we start to really look into those parameters, and then you are providing a product that is good, you're going to get the financial gains for your produce. The market is going to be readily or just waiting, for your produce. And
Can
that's
you
when you get your,
can you explain the term meat to bone ratio?
it's basically, what is like the condition of the animals at market weight. So you don't want animals that are, you want good muscling, basically. Yeah, you want good muscle development and good fat, we say marbling, they say marbling, but you want good amount, like a good amount of muscle and fat and bone, you know. Yeah,
Yes.
it's just muscle. Yeah, you want good muscle in with your carcass, from your
Yeah, but
carcass.
in this region, is there really any standard?
Well, I'm not that I'm aware of, because again, I'm not aware of much research being done into the quality of, let's say, goat meat. You know, let's say goat meat is a big thing in the region. And I'm not aware of studies that actually look into those parameters where goat meat is concerned, in terms of the ages of slaughter and the fat content, the flavor. And so all of those different things, the studies have been done with looking at lamb production in terms of the how much fat the lamb has, the flavor of the meat, the tenderness as well. They literally do studies on all these aspects in terms of the fiber content, because, and it's to suit the market in terms of the restaurants. Like some people, they prefer, depending on what the population or the demand for lamb is, or how they want the lamb, then they would then grow them accordingly, which is based on how they would feed them and when they would slaughter them. So it's really, because the research was done, they know what the market requires. So they would put
Okay.
all the, yeah. So I could ask you, like, from your experience, what is the general market in Jamaica requires in terms of goat meat? How they like it, you know?
Curry. Like,
You just
yeah,
want.
it's I think as much as, and I think I may be in the minority in this, I think
Uh-huh.
Jamaica, when it comes to goat meat, is still, or goat products, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
cheese. I think Jamaica is still in its infancy. Sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Thanks for the correction of the word. Yeah, in its
Yeah.
infancy when it comes to culinary development
Mm-hmm.
with goat meat,
Yeah.
because they only eat goat, curry goat. They
Full
Jamaicans for the
stop.
most part
Yeah.
eat curry goat, and I've had goat in like 6 different ways um, since we started here on this farm. And
Mm-hmm.
before we started, I've had it many other ways from my travels. So, I don't know if it's a taste thing that they're just used to curry and they don't venture off into anything else. But I think Jamaica should start trying different ways of cooking goat, and I think it will open the market.
Yeah, because I think if we really look into, say, slaughtering kids at 6 months as opposed to a year, another thing they look at too is castrating males. They look at the meat quality or the meat product you get from castrated males versus intact males and then young females. So they look at the texture, the fiber texture, the fat content, everything. And so yeah, we should really look into that, because I'm sure even with the curry goats, there are sometimes you might find it's a bit tough.
It's either
Yeah.
tough or it's just pure bone. Serious. Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
we've done it. We've done the test here on our farm where we've killed a mature
Right.
buck that's older, 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and we've butchered, the 6 to 8 months, and I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you it's a world of difference in the
Right. You
taste,
see?
the
Mm-hmm.
texture, like everything is different. The
So
burger
just
is different. Well, the older goat, the burger is not bad; it's good. But when it comes to
so
the
just
other end, it
imagine if
takes a
we
lot.
do some good meat analysis tests, if we really
Yeah,
look into
and
the quality of the meat. And
yeah,
yeah.
and I think
And
it
that
will
is a
open the
factor to
market.
enable us to market our products. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think it will open the market significantly if there's different ways of using the meat. You know what I mean? And
Right.
you go to markets like slaughter markets or meat shops, and trust me, you're getting old meat. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
speaking of this, let's speak about the challenges our region face when it comes to the development of the small ruminant industry, whether it's
Okay.
lamb, whether it's sheep or goat. I
Mm-hmm.
think
Just in general.
I don't know if sheep is ahead of goat operations when it comes to development. Maybe Dr. Young can speak on that, but I feel like we're we're like hamsters on a hamster wheel.
Mm.
Really, you know what I mean? We've been
Right.
going at this for so long, but there's no real
We're
movement
not, we're not making that
advancing.
breakthrough.
Yeah, we're not advancing at all.
Yeah, yeah. Because the challenges are the same. So, we talk at length in terms of nutrition. So, one thing that perhaps, I mean, given our availability of forages here, with climate change and dry season, that's a challenge by itself. So, perhaps maybe if we look into, in some instances, let's say for pig and poultry, you might have a concentrate or a ration for, like, say, during pregnancy. Now, I don't know if we will want to look into that for the different stages in small ruminant production to help farmers meet the nutritional requirements of the animals, especially when they don't have forages available. So maybe you could go and buy a bag of gestation ration for your pregnant goats. That's providing that you breed them in groups,
Hmm.
right? Or you could go and get a ration to help your young kids to get them to that market weight. You understand? So that's one, perhaps another opportunity we could look into to deal with the forages, the deficiency in not having readily available forages.
I
Land
think
the another.
I
Mhm.
think in Jamaica here, the feed companies, I know I know for sure that um, Nutrimix had a grow and small ruminants grow concentrate, and they have
Okay.
a milk booster concentrate. I know Hypro has a maintenance and a lactating
They have the rations.
concentrate. Yeah, that's
Okay.
specialized in. I think the ration is specially formulated for lactating ruminants. I think they
Okay.
sell it most to the dairy industry, and then they have a maintenance ration. And I know
Mm.
Nutrimix has a milk booster
Mm-hmm.
for lactating mothers, and they have and their regular
Okay.
ration is about 18% crude protein or
Right.
17% crude protein. So I think here in Jamaica, I know you see Dr. Young says we have high energy, high protein
High
concentrate
protein
for that.
concentrates.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So
good because ideally, I mean, I prefer forages. If we really knew the nutritive, if we really research the different nutritive, the yielding values of our forages and utilize them as best as possible, farmers wouldn't really need to buy as much concentrates because that's
yeah, but Dr.
expensive.
Young's
You
not trying to
understand?
hear.
Repeat
I
that?
said Dr. Young ain't trying to hear that. Dr. Young and Khalil and them are not trying to hear
Well,
that.
yeah.
They're trying to say, hey, yo, you can just add some more
They
concentrate.
have feeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
You
I've
see, if
seen, the
you
thing
read,
is,
if
I've
this
seen how the past,
now if you
no,
see the
my thing is,
comments, you see them telling us that they have all their concentrates available.
right, but at the same time, I have seen how pasture-based systems work. You understand? So I'm gonna still vow for growing your forages,
Hmm.
using them at the required yields to get the same results out of the animals rather than that the additional cost to be buying concentrate. Because what happens is farmers get too dependent on the concentrates. You understand?
Yeah. I think I really strongly believe in knowing what's available around you and how
Mm-hmm.
to apply it. And if you're in a jam, then you know you can get some concentrate to supplement, but
Right.
you should
Only when you
utilize
need it.
utilize
Yeah.
what's around you for the
Mm-hmm.
most part. um I think Cardi and Bodles and all them places need to really step up the research on some of these forages, or if the research is done. Okay, Dr. Young, I'm sorry. I didn't need to call you out. But you know I love you, Dr. Young. I love you. So
Right.
yeah, because maybe the report that research is there and it's not being publicized, but
Mm-hmm.
we really need to know, like, how do we apply all this stuff around us? Because in Jamaica you got native goats that are just like everywhere and they survive. So, but if they're in a management system, they will even do better if they're in a managed pasture or manage grazing situation. Oh, we're up on our last few seconds. We're gonna restart the live and come back to
Okay.
finish up this discussion because we're only down to 10 seconds and we only get 1 hour at a time. So I'm gonna
Okay.
end this and come back.
Okay. No problem.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.